Hey YouTube, welcome back to Tinker with Tools. Tonight we're going to be talking about a universal battery solution called PD Nation, so let's go ahead and get right into that on Tinker with Tools. Now, about a month ago, a rep from Ceenr, the company that makes PD Nation, reached out to me and asked if I wanted to go ahead and try their new universal battery platform. Because I think this is a good concept, I did want to go ahead and do that, so they did provide the batteries at no cost to me. I still maintain full control over the video, and you're going to get my honest opinions about it, whether it be good, bad, or somewhere in between. So let's go ahead and get right into the video. So now, before cordless tools, you could actually just go out and buy corded tool options from a variety of different platforms, have tools from just about any different brand, and it was okay because you didn't have to worry about whether or not you had a tool battery and a charger for that different platform. Now, cordless tools have become the predominant source of tools over, say, the last 10 to 15 years, predominantly really though in the last 10, we started to see power tool options where the cordless version can even be more powerful than a corded option, but because the investment into batteries is going to be a costly one, if you want to get any amount of serious work done with a number of tools, you are typically going to see people picking a single platform. You can pick good tool platforms, and I really do think that if you really had to do it, you could stick to just a single tool platform, but I've long been a proponent of having at least one or two different platforms where you can kind of then go ahead and pick and choose and maybe even take advantage of one company's sales on a tool instead of having to pay full price at another. That's something that I've done a time or two where I've picked up a cheaper tool on a different platform for tools that just don't necessarily need to be heavy duty. I don't need to pay top dollar for my fan because guess what? It's a fan. And so being able to have a Ryobi fan works just fine for me. But once again, that's where I would have to have a Ryobi battery and a Ryobi charger. But what if it didn't have to be that way? Well, the folks over at Ceenr, the makers of PD Nation, have decided to go ahead and try and make a universal tool battery platform. This is the 4 amp hour PD Nation 18 volt battery, 20 volt max, 18 volt nominal. It's going to work with any of your 18 to 20 volt tools that you can buy these adapters for. Now, the 4 that I am going to be testing today are going to be Makita, Bosch, DeWalt, and Milwaukee. They also then make them for Black & Decker, Porter Cable, Einhall, Works, Ryobi, and Craftsman. Now that's where we start to talk about what is going to be on this battery. By itself, it's just basically a brick. Inside there are going to be 5 21700 battery cells that are going to add up to 4000 milliamp hours or 4 amp hours of total battery capacity on here. On the front of it, you are going to have a little red button that allows you to see the charge indicator with these 4 green lights. And then you're also going to have a USB Type-C and a USB Type-A port on the front. Now, the USB Type-C port is used to actually charge the tool. We'll talk about that more later on. Both of those ports can be used to charge other devices. So for example, you could go ahead and charge your cell phone or perhaps even a laptop or a tablet off of this battery. But we are talking about power tool batteries after all, and that's where these start to come in. Now this is going to be the adapter for Makita, and I can go ahead and just kind of line it up and slot it in. And now this is going to be a Makita battery that is going to work on my Makita tools. Now, like I said, I also then have the adapters for Bosch, DeWalt, and Milwaukee. And so what I want to do today is I want to kind of run through this and do some different testing with different tool options on these different companies and compare them to the most comparable tool battery that I have. Let's go ahead and do the testing and then kind of come back here, talk about the results, and then even talk about what I'd consider to be the good, perhaps some of the bad if there is any, and just the honest truth about how I feel about this. All right, one more try. So it seems like when it cuts out like that, the battery is just kaput until you do something to kind of kickstart it again. It cycles through all 4 dots, then it flashes the first dot several times, and then it shows full bars. So you'll have just seen the testing, and I'll be honest, the testing did not necessarily go how I necessarily thought it would. So let's go ahead and run through each of the tests and just kind of talk about them. The first one up was going to be the Makita. I ran an impact driver. We just did some 5-inch structural screws. There was not a noticeable difference in the tool being able to use the 5 amp hour versus this 4 amp hour. The tool functioned how I would expect it to. Obviously, the times will tell if there was a performance difference, and I'll have shown that to you. Now, when we moved on to the saw comparison, that is going to be the first place where we ran into a little hiccup. Right out of the box, I actually was not able to get this to go onto any of my Milwaukee circular saws in what I'd consider to be a normal or easy fashion. After trying it on 2 different circular saws, I went ahead and tried it on the impact driver and it fit fine. Now I went back to the saws. That's where I gave it a pretty hefty hit and did get it to go ahead and engage onto the tool, and then from there the tool functioned just fine, but it just seemed like maybe the fit and finish was just a little bit off as it related to those Milwaukee tools. Now the particular saw that I ran is the brand new M18 6.5-inch cordless circular saw, and that tool is one that I do think that you benefit from having at least a 6 amp hour high output battery. It's not incapable of making cuts on lesser batteries, but it's certainly not where the performance really shines. On that one, I actually compared it both to a 3 amp hour high output battery, which would have 21700 cells just like this, and then a 4 amp hour XC battery, which would have 2 rows of 18650 cells. I don't think that the tool necessarily was in its element on a 4 amp hour battery, but compared to the 5 amp or the 4 amp hour that I ran against, I don't know that I saw a performance hit necessarily in running that tool. The biggest hiccup with Milwaukee was just the fitment of how it went onto the battery. Now we get to DeWalt, and that's where the testing was probably the most frustrating, if you will. For that test, we decided to do a DeWalt drill, and with that drill, I went and drilled 3 holes each with 3 different style bits. The 1.25" is where I started to see some confusing or interesting results. When it would cut out on that, the battery was just completely dead. It would not respond to anything. The tool had no power, and it wasn't until I would go and hook it back up to the charger that you'd see the lights do a little cycle where it would first blink the first one, then cycle through all 4 of the lights, and then it would go back up and show that it was at a full charge again. Now, as a point of trying to test it further, I went ahead and grabbed a Bosch drill and did the same test with the Bosch drill, and I was able to get the exact same cutout with the same results of having to hook it back up to the charger to kind of jump start it back to life. Now, that is where I think the results with this battery start to get, like I said, a little frustrating. That is not something that I want to have to do. I don't want to have to always have a charger with me even necessarily, especially if I'm just doing some light duty work and I know I've got enough battery capacity to be able to get through the work. That could be something that is really frustrating right there. And that's where I guess you could say the testing had promising moments, but ultimately that kind of leaves a little bit of a stain on that testing in my opinion. So with the testing kind of talked about and out of the way, let's talk about the good and obviously at this point some of the bad. Now the good that I see with this is the concept as it stands, I think is a solid concept. If you can make a good quality battery, one that is well made, durable, of high quality products, and make it at an affordable price, and I don't necessarily mean undercutting manufacturers, but making it accessible enough where I could buy a high quality product at a decent price, I think the concept of being able to have these different slide-on adapters in theory is one that works. Now as it stands, a 4 amp hour battery is not going to be sufficient for every type of power tool. I think this is going to be currently something that is best used with lower demand tools. Now I have reached reached out to Ceenr, and I'll include information if they respond before this video goes live, asking if they have further plans to release larger capacity batteries. Down the road, they come out with an 8 amp hour battery like this. It might solve some of those initial issues. Now, ultimately, there is going to be some things that I think fell a little bit short of, I guess, what you'd call expectations. When I got this out of the box, I went to go ahead and give it a charge and plug it in using the USB-C port, and ultimately my USB-C port was a bit misaligned. And even though I took the battery apart, realigned it a little bit, and I got it to the point where I can actually kind of finagle a cord in there and get it to charge, the fit and finish from the factory left a little bit to be desired. And now the second place that I think it is lacking is related to charging again. Charging method, I think, leaves a lot to be desired. Now, I know some tool companies don't offer the greatest base charger, but even with some of the lower end ones, you're getting roughly 50, maybe 55 watts of charging out of kind of their base charger. But I have a lot of chargers that are capable of delivering a much better charging experience. This is going to charge at a max of 45 watt. And so because of that, you're really going to be limited on how quickly you can charge up this battery. If they could come up with a different charging solution for this, one that was capable of faster rates of charging, then I think that improves this a little bit. This battery has short circuit protection, overcharge and discharge protection, and overheating protection, but it's all going to be baked into the battery. When you're dealing with an integrated solution from top to bottom, you're going to have those technologies that work together. That is going to be something where they are on their own for this, and you're not going to be getting that communication between the tools or the chargers and the battery itself. Now, in terms of pricing and availability, currently the only place you can buy this is in a pre-order or a crowdfunding situation through Indiegogo. Now, I've also reached out to my rep at Ceenr to kind of just ask them what is the availability going to be like. If they provide me information for that, I'll go ahead and include it in the video so you can go ahead and see that. But as of right now, I don't know what that's going to be. If this is only ever available on Indiegogo and in those packages, it starts to be a little bit less appealing to me. But if I can go to Amazon, for example, and pick up these batteries and pick up replacements, see sale pricing on them occasionally, and be able to pick up individual adapters as I need to, say I need a second Makita one on a whim, that's where I think there is potential for this platform. I think currently it's just in a really still raw state, and I think that's my conclusion about the whole thing. This type of thought process or this type of technology I think is good, but the batteries have to work and work consistently well for this to make a lot of sense. And so if I had any message to Ceenr, PD Nation, it would be to keep going and continue to develop this and maybe smooth out some of those rough edges right now, because as a concept or as an idea, I think this really works. I just don't know if it is ready for you to rely on as your primary source for batteries, especially on bigger tools. Overall, like I said, I think there's some rough edges. I think there's some things that need to be kind of continually developed a little bit, but overall the concept for it I think is a good one. And it's one that benefits the consumer if they can pull it off and execute it well. So I think there is some reason to support it necessarily, and perhaps try and continue to get them to develop this through supporting the early stages of it, because it could really benefit us if they can pull it off and execute it well in the end. If you have any questions about the batteries or the adapters, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. If you like this sort of video, go ahead and hit the like button. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. As always, thank you for all the support, and until next time, I'll catch you on Tinker with Tools.